The street noise dissolved in the cool air as Donald Trump stepped out of the black SUV and headed toward the small shop on the corner. It was an ordinary grocery store, dilapidated shelves, dim lighting, and the smell of coffee mixed with a faint aroma of baked goods. There were few visitors, only a handful of people wandering between the aisles. Trump stopped by the milk display, grabbed a bottle, and headed to the register. Behind the counter stood a young cashier, a girl around 25, with auburn hair tied in a ponytail and delicate facial features. Her name tag read, Emma. She was typing something on the register, and when she saw Trump, her face darkened. "Is this? Seriously?" Her voice trembled with anger. "Are you joking?" Trump raised an eyebrow. "Sorry, what? You have the nerve to come here after what you did?" Emma's voice gained strength, and a few customers started to pay attention. 10 days after you," her voice cracked, "because of you, my brother lost his job. My family is barely making ends meet." Trump placed the bottle on the counter and slowly inhaled. The room fell into tense silence. Emma looked at him with teary eyes, her fingers trembling on the register. "I'm sorry to hear that," Trump replied calmly. "Sorry." Her voice wavered. "It's easy for you to say that when you're sleeping in a luxurious penthouse while we're here just surviving." Trump looked at her more closely. He noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the faint blush on her cheeks from holding back tears. She looked exhausted. "I'm not making excuses," he said quietly. "But maybe I can help." "You?" Emma nervously laughed. "You wouldn't understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck." Trump paused for a moment, then quietly said, "Tell me." Emma glanced at him in surprise. Her chest rose and fell quickly from her quickened breathing. She hesitated but finally clenched her fists and said, "If you really want to know, stay. I'll show you." She sharply punched in the price of the milk on the register and slid it toward him. $3.50. Trump took out his wallet, placed the bill on the counter, and grabbed the bottle. "Deal," he said. Emma looked at him suspiciously. Her gaze was sharp, but there was a hint of surprise in it. Trump left the store, but before he opened the door, he stopped and turned to her. "I'll be back tomorrow. If you don't mind." Emma didn't answer, but her gaze lingered on him longer than she intended. The next day, when Trump returned to the store, the atmosphere was less tense. He entered the shop just as the street began to fill with the morning noise. The warm sunlight filtered through the windows, illuminating the old shelves stocked with goods. Emma was at the counter, but today she seemed a little less anxious. "You came back," she said, though her tone was calmer now. "What do you need?" Trump smiled and, not answering immediately, stepped closer to the counter. He noticed how her eyes blinked, how she tried to figure out what to expect from him. "I came to talk," Trump said. "If you want, you can leave your shift." Emma paused but agreed, as if something in his voice had made her act. They sat at a table by the window, where the city noise seemed less pronounced. Trump placed the cup of coffee he'd gotten at the counter in front of him and looked at Emma. "Tell me more," he said calmly. "Why did you react like that yesterday?" Emma took a deep breath, and her gaze turned uneasy again. "Do you really want to hear this?" she asked, her voice on the verge of breaking. "You won't understand. All we have is a job we hate. We try, and you destroy lives with your decisions. How can I not be angry?" Trump leaned forward, listening to every word she said. "I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes," he said after a pause. "But I want to understand. You have a right to your frustration. I just want to know why you feel this way." Emma held his gaze, thinking about how to respond. Her heart was racing, but it seemed she found the strength to continue speaking. "My brother worked at a factory that shut down because of your policies. And now he's sitting at home, unable to find work. You've destroyed an entire town, all our businesses." "I don't do this for pleasure," Trump replied, his voice low and measured. "The decisions I make don't always have immediate results. I know the lost jobs are important to you, and they're important to me, too. But change takes time. I'm just trying to improve the situation." The silence in the room grew heavier, but Emma didn't look away. Trump didn't feel comfortable, but he didn't feel the aggression he expected, either. "You feel pain and anger," Trump said. "I understand that. But let's try to work through this, not through fighting, but through cooperation. You and your brother deserve help, and I'm willing to provide it." Emma thought for a moment. This wasn't what she had expected from him. She had been prepared to hear more empty promises or another lecture about political principles that didn't concern her reality. But instead, she heard something new. A genuine desire to understand. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to make sense of why this meeting didn't look like what she had imagined. "I mean, maybe I can create new jobs where they are most needed," Trump replied. "It won't be quick, but I'm willing to start the process." Emma was still surprised. Doubt appeared in her eyes, but also hope. "We'll see," she said quietly. "I'm not promising I'll forgive you, but if you're serious, maybe it's worth a try." Trump nodded, then added softly, "There's always hope, even when it seems like there isn't. And I'm sure that small changes can lead to big results." After this conversation, there were no words that could change everything, but Trump felt that this was the first step in the right direction. Emma looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, there was not only anger on her face but also an attempt to understand. "We'll see," she repeated. And though the end of the story wasn't clear, both of them understood that this might be the beginning of something new. Trump didn't wait until the next day. Right after his meeting with Emma, he headed to his office to begin implementing what he had just promised. He realized that changes needed to start not with promises but with concrete actions that could improve the situation on the ground. He announced the launch of a large-scale economic reboot program, focusing on the cities and businesses most affected by the closure of factories. Trump decided to provide non-repayable subsidies to local manufacturers, supporting small and medium-sized businesses, and to launch new programs to create jobs in the affected regions. The first step was the launch of an infrastructure development initiative and the restoration of industrial parks that had been coldly shut down due to poor management. He announced the creation of a fund to help businesses that wanted to resume operations but lacked the necessary funds. This was meant to be the foundation for economic revival in the local areas. He also announced new training programs for people who had lost their jobs, providing them with new skills for work in modern technological sectors. This was intended not only to help the unemployed but also to stimulate the development of new industries. In parallel, Trump decided to hold meetings with local leaders, entrepreneurs, and community activists to find out what people needed on the ground. He began sending his representatives to the most affected regions to assess the situation and implement the necessary changes at the grassroots level. Despite many doubting his resolve, Trump himself felt that this was the right step. In his speeches, he often repeated that actions are more important than words, and that he was ready not just to talk about change, but to take responsibility for making it happen. And although many people doubted his intentions, Trump felt that this moment was exactly when real change needed to be made. He decided not to wait but to take action, even if it sometimes meant going against established political structures. For him, this was not just a political strategy, but a real step towards restoring trust and stability in the country. His actions began to yield results. Local businesses started receiving support, and new jobs were created in cities where unemployment had previously been rampant. The retraining programs also received a great response from the public, and Trump saw that his initiatives were starting to have a real impact. He understood that this was only the first step on a long path, but that path had already begun to unfold. He felt that his decisions had the potential to change the country, and this time the changes were not just promises. Trump was ready to truly act, despite all the challenges and doubts. Trump's actions began to attract attention not only at the national level but also in the international context. His initiatives to revive the economy and support small businesses became the subject of numerous debates in the media. Many people who had previously criticized him for his management methods began to question their previous assumptions. However, not everyone was ready to accept these changes. One evening, Trump received a call from Emma. She was one of those who supported his economic recovery plan, but now she had to face the challenges arising from his decisiveness. "You've changed everything," she said when Trump picked up the phone. "But we're entering a new phase of the struggle." "And what exactly do you mean?" Trump asked, sensing that she wanted to say more than just praise. "This won't be easy. You still don't see how hard it will be to get support for all these changes. Not everyone can accept that things are moving so quickly, and they feel like they're losing their positions. Trump understood that Emma was right. His decisions, although aimed at the greater good, were starting to create new political obstacles. Corporations, which had previously benefited from old systems, began to resist. Large businesses, which had once carried the economy on their shoulders, were concerned that the new initiatives might strip them of their privileges. However, Trump remained convinced that change was necessary for the country, and his determination only grew stronger. Alongside the rollout of economic initiatives, he began meeting with those who had witnessed his changes, engaging with people on a personal level. Trump realized that it was important not just to implement changes but also to constantly explain to people why these changes were important. He focused on open meetings and direct communication with citizens. One such meeting took place in St. Louis. Trump was surprised when he saw that more people had gathered for the meeting than he had expected. People were eager to learn more about what was happening in the country and his vision for the future. The city streets smelled of freshly baked goods from cafes, and the air was filled with the aroma of coffee, which permeated the atmosphere. It was a small event, but it meant more than just a discussion about politics. It was about the future. Trump took the podium, trying to convey his message. "I understand that change is not always easy," he began, "and that every new idea raises doubts, but it is through these changes that we can build a strong country, one that will not be limited by past mistakes. We must think about the future, not just delay problems." People listened to him attentively. They weren't sure that Trump was their ideal leader, but they were willing to give him a chance. And that was exactly what he needed, a chance. When the meeting ended, a woman approached him and said, "I understand that you're trying to change the situation. And I'm ready to help. Maybe together we can make things better." Trump smiled. "Thank you. We're doing this together, and every step counts. Together, we can change even the worst circumstances." Meanwhile, in the store where it all started with a conversation between Trump and the saleswoman, the woman continued to express her support for the changes within her team. She was no longer just a critic, she was an active participant in the process. And although her life had changed, she realized that even small steps could have a big impact on the people around her. Trump remained calm, though he was impressed that these small changes were starting to have a real effect. Now, he only had to keep moving forward, knowing that even if it wouldn't be easy, he had already taken the first step. And these first steps turned out to be the most important ones. Trump didn't stop. With each passing day, his economic reform plan took on new dimensions. He realized that the initial changes were just the beginning, and now it was time to act on all fronts to truly improve the lives of ordinary people. One of his biggest achievements was increasing funding for small businesses, which often felt pressure from large corporations. He knew that small businesses were the driving force behind the country's economy, so it was crucial to create the right conditions for their growth. "Trump, you can't even imagine how much this changes the situation," Emma said during one of their meetings. "People feel more confident in their business. They no longer think they're unlucky or that their business dreams will never come true." "I've always believed that the true strength of a country is in its people, not in corporations," Trump replied, continuing to review reports. "We're creating space for development. Every business is an opportunity for society to thrive." Trump actively supported local initiatives, involving local entrepreneurs and promoting the development of infrastructure in small towns and villages. New opportunities were emerging in every corner of the country for those striving to succeed. But it wasn't just about money, it was about instilling a belief in a better future for everyone who got the chance. One of these changes focused on education. Trump introduced vocational training programs for middle-aged people who had lost their jobs due to automation or other economic factors. He understood that education should be accessible to everyone, not just young people, and took steps to create educational programs that allowed people to learn new skills and adapt to changes in the job market. In St. Louis, one of the centers for implementing his initiatives, a new professional development program was launched. Trump organized an event where business and education representatives could talk to citizens. The hall was packed with people interested in how they could change their lives through education and work in new fields. Trump took the stage, and his words resonated confidently because he knew his initiatives were changing people's real lives. Today we are not just building an economy, we are building the future of each of you, he said. And I am confident that with your efforts and our collective work, we will achieve great success. The audience applauded. Many people began their journey of change, opening new opportunities for themselves. It wasn't just about money, it was about a sense of hope and stability. Several months after these events, Trump visited a school in one of the districts of St. Louis. Where it seemed nothing had changed for many years, there was now a new energy. Students greeted him warmly, and teachers reported that the changes implemented in the educational programs had indeed yielded results. Students began to better understand their opportunities, and most importantly, believed in themselves. I want you to understand, Trump said, addressing the students. Your dreams can come true if you work on them. And I will do everything I can to ensure each of you has a chance to achieve your goals. This moment became pivotal. People began to see their role in the country in a new way, understanding that change truly begins with them. Trump had taken a step toward making people feel not just part of the system, but its creators. Additionally, Trump began to actively support the development of medical services for underserved populations. He launched a program for accessible healthcare, which allowed many people to receive the necessary help without large financial burdens. This also marked an important moment in the country's transformation. The entire country began to feel the changes, and every citizen, whether a small business owner, a regular worker, or a student, became part of this process. Over time, Trump realized that his initiatives were not just politics, but a way of life for many people. And he was ready to continue this path, knowing that his mission was to serve those who truly needed change. Over time, the changes that Trump had initiated began to bear fruit. The country's economy stabilized, small businesses flourished, and social initiatives provided real support to the people. Many who had once felt forgotten now felt that their fate had changed for the better. Rural communities began to thrive again, becoming part of the great country, not just its forgotten outskirts. And although his political career had been complicated, Trump felt that the most important changes had already been implemented. He saw how his small business support system was working, how people were getting the opportunity to change their lives through educational and healthcare programs. He saw how the country was gradually becoming more united, less divided. One day, Trump decided to take a break from the political hustle and bustle and visit one of the cities where he had implemented his programs. It was a small town in the western part of the country that had become a symbol of change for him. I've always believed that a nation is made of people, not politicians or corporations, he said, walking through the town that was now filled with new opportunities. Now we can look to the future with hope, knowing that everyone has a chance. Meeting with the people he had helped served as confirmation for him that his efforts had not been in vain. They thanked him, but Trump felt that the credit was more theirs than his. You changed your own lives, he told them. I just created the conditions for it. When Trump returned to Washington, he was no longer the person he had been at the beginning of his journey. He was no longer just a political leader. He had become a symbol of change, of people who believed in a better future and worked for it. A new phase had begun in the country. Trump had completed his mission, and although he had to face criticism and difficulties, he knew he had left a legacy that would continue to benefit ordinary people. His changes didn't fade over time. They became part of what made the country strong and just. Thus ended the story of Trump as a president who didn't just do politics but truly changed people's lives. And although he was leaving office, his changes continued to live on, helping the country develop and prosper, giving everyone a chance at a better future.